The moon hung low and swollen over the dense forest, spilling silver light across twisted branches and glimmering frost. Somewhere in the distance, a lone wolf howled, its mournful note curling through the night like smoke. In that moment, Lyra remembered the night her pack vanished, leaving her with nothing but whispered legends and a secret she could never speak. She pressed her palm against the rough bark of a tree, closing her eyes as memories clawed through her mind. The scent of blood, fear, and betrayal lingered still. Her mother's voice echoed in the hollows of her memory. "Hide, Lyra, hide, or you will be taken." And so she had. She had hidden among humans for years, walking invisible in plain sight, every heartbeat a reminder of the life stolen from her. Yet the forest had its own pulse. Even in hiding, she could feel the shifting of something powerful, something watching. The Alpha. The legend spoke of him, the protector, the mate, the hunter who could pierce through lies and shadows alike. And as the wind shifted, carrying the faint musk of wolf and danger, Lyra knew the time of hiding was coming to an end. Her chest tightened. The secret she had carried for so long would not stay buried forever. Somewhere out there, a predator moved with intent, following the threads of fate that bound them both. And Lyra realized with a shiver that ran down her spine that the moon's whisper had always been a warning. The morning bell rang with a shrill note, announcing the beginning of a day Lyra had rehearsed in her mind 1,000 times. Humans bustled past her, their voices weaving a tapestry of noise she both envied and feared. She kept her gaze low, hood pulled tight, blending into the throng like water slipping between rocks. Yet even here she could feel it, the undercurrent of eyes that lingered too long, hearts beating too fast, instincts that told her she was different. She took a deep breath and reminded herself, blend, survive, go unnoticed, but survival was never simple when the scent of danger lingered on her skin, subtle yet insistent, and then she saw him, a stranger standing just beyond the cluster of lockers, his gaze sharp, dark, and unyielding. Every instinct in her body prickled. Something about him made her chest tighten, her pulse stutter. He was human, yet not. She could sense the predator beneath the calm exterior, a wolf, an alpha. Lyra's fingers curled into her sleeves, knuckles white. Keep calm, don't look, don't breathe too loud. Yet curiosity, that dangerous spark, forced her eyes to meet his. For a brief moment the world seemed to still, a heartbeat stretching into eternity. And then he smiled, or perhaps it was the ghost of a smile, and turned away, leaving her trembling with questions she dared not ask. The hallway felt impossibly long as she made her way to class, every whisper and laugh echoing against her nerves. Hidden in plain sight, she was an actor on a stage of flesh and bone, and the Alpha, whatever his name, had already noticed her. Her mind raced. Who was he? Why did his presence set her senses alight? And most importantly, did he know she was hiding more than just a face among humans? Even as the day dragged on, Lyra could not shake the image of him from her mind. The stranger with dark eyes that seemed to see through the walls she had built around herself. She felt exposed, yet strangely drawn, as though the threads of fate themselves tugged at her chest. Every hallway turned into a gauntlet of silent observation. She could feel him in the periphery, always just far enough to avoid confrontation, yet close enough to make her pulse quicken. During lunch, she sat alone at a sunlit corner table, her tray untouched. Her senses were alert, every whisper, every movement amplified. And then she saw it, his shadow gliding past the cafeteria windows, the faintest smirk curling at the edge of his mouth, as if he knew a secret she did not. Her heart beat erratically. Why am I drawn to him? She wondered, tension tightening in her chest. Every instinct screamed caution, yet desire and curiosity mingled dangerously in her veins. She had survived years hiding her true nature, but in his presence, she felt naked. A crash of trays in the hallway startled her. He appeared at the doorway, his posture relaxed but commanding, dark hair falling into his eyes, and then his gaze found hers, that single, piercing look stripped away pretense, exposing her fear and fascination in equal measure. For a moment, time slowed. Lyra wanted to look away, to melt into the crowd and disappear, yet her body refused. Something unspoken passed between them, a dangerous connection that hummed like an electric current along her spine. Are you always this quiet?" His voice was low, smooth, carrying an authority she could not ignore. Lyra's stomach tightened. I just prefer to observe," she said, keeping her tone light, careful not to betray the storm beneath her calm exterior. He tilted his head, considering her. Observation is wise, but sometimes it draws attention you don't want. A shiver ran down her spine. The words were innocuous enough, yet they carried a weight, a warning that unsettled her in a way she could not name. She wanted to ask questions, to demand his intentions, but the words died on her lips. He was a mystery wrapped in authority, a predator, and yet something undeniably magnetic. As the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, he disappeared into the crowd again, leaving her with a heartbeat that would not settle and a mind racing with possibilities. Who was he really? What did he want? And why did the mere glance of his eyes make her senses scream? Lyra clenched her fists beneath the table, a strange thrill mingling with fear. Something had shifted, subtly but irrevocably. And as she walked to her next class, she could not shake the feeling that her carefully hidden life was about to collide with a force she was neither prepared for nor able to resist. Her pulse thundered in her ears. The Alpha had found her, and the game of shadows and stolen glances had only just begun. The night had a way of crawling into Lyra's thoughts, wrapping itself around her like a second skin. She couldn't focus on her homework, her pen hovering uselessly over the paper as memories clawed their way from the shadows of her mind. She remembered the Packer family, her home, the warmth of a fire that no longer existed. The air smelled of pine and loss, and every whispered laugh of her classmates felt like an intrusion on a life she had buried long ago. She had learned early that secrecy was survival. One careless word, one misjudged glance, and her world could unravel. The curse she carried, a mark inherited from a long line of shifters, made her dangerous, but invisible. Humans could never know, or they would fear her, and wolves. Well, wolves had a way of smelling lies. Her fingers trembled as she traced the edge of the pendant hidden beneath her blouse, a silver crescent engraved with symbols only she could read. It was the last gift from her mother, a talisman against those who would hunt her, against fate itself. Sometimes she wondered if her destiny had been written in silver on that crescent, every curve a warning she had not yet understood. The memory of the stranger, the Alpha, made her pulse quicken again. She could feel him in her mind as much as in the hallway, his presence threading through her thoughts like a forbidden melody. How had he found her scent so easily? How had he recognized her among hundreds of humans? Questions clawed at her, but the answers were dangerous. She had to remain hidden. A sudden crash of a locker door in the hallway jolted her out of her reverie. Someone had dropped their books nearby, laughter ringing out across the corridor. Her instincts flared, subtle yet sharp alert, ready. She had learned to move like a shadow, unnoticed yet aware. But for the first time in years, she felt the thrill of being seen, and it frightened her more than any predator ever could. She pressed her back to the wall, careful not to draw attention, and allowed herself a quick glance toward the doorway. Her chest tightened when she saw him there, leaning casually, yet every muscle poised as if ready to pounce. His eyes, dark and assessing, seemed to pierce not just through her body, but through every mask she had worn for survival. He sees me, he knows. The thought struck her like ice. Every precaution, every careful step she had taken to remain hidden now felt inadequate. And yet, the fear was interlaced with an undeniable pull. He was dangerous, yes, but magnetic in a way that made her pulse stutter, her mind spin, and her heart betray her instincts. A small incident, a spilled tray, a flustered apology, threatened to reveal her reflexes, her speed, and her strength. She caught herself just in time, but the warning lingered, one misstep, and her secret could be exposed. She clenched her fists, her nails pressing into her palms, her heart hammering. The walls she had built around herself were cracking, and the Alpha, with his silent watchfulness, was the unseen hand forcing the fractures wider. Lyra exhaled slowly, the air tasting of anticipation and fear. Secrets beneath the mask were safe only for so long, and the moment was coming, sooner than she dared imagine, when her past, her curse, and her hidden power would collide with the present, and nothing would be the same. The hallway was quieter than usual, the hum of students fading into the background as Lyra's senses sharpened. She felt it before she saw him, a presence that filled the space like a shadow swallowing the light. Her chest tightened, muscles coiled in instinctive readiness, and then he stepped forward. The stranger from the cafeteria, the one whose gaze had haunted her since morning, was unmistakably different now. His posture radiated authority, a predator comfortable in his own skin, every step deliberate, commanding. Dark hair brushed against a strong jawline, eyes sharp as winter steel, and the scent, oh, the scent, hit her like a tidal wave of recognition and warning. Alpha. Her heart skipped, a drumbeat she could neither control nor ignore. She had hidden from humans, from hunters, from rivals, but she had never hidden from one like him. His gaze locked on hers, unyielding and intense, as if he could see every secret she had buried beneath years of careful masks. "You," he said, his voice low but carrying the weight of authority, almost a growl beneath the words. Lyra's pulse surged. She wanted to retreat, to vanish into the crowd, yet her feet felt rooted. I don't know what you mean," she said, voice trembling just enough to betray her calm facade. His lips curved faintly, almost amused. "You do. I can smell you a mile away. Hiding among humans doesn't change who you are, Lyra." The world seemed to narrow around those words. He knew her name. How? The tremor of panic and thrill tangled in her stomach. She pressed a hand against the locker nearest her, knuckles white, as her instinct screamed at her to run. Yet another part of her, the part that had been lonely for so long, longed to stay, to be seen, to be known. "You shouldn't be here," he said, stepping closer, the air between them charged, almost impossible to breathe. "It's not safe, not for you, not for anyone who doesn't understand what you carry." Lyra's chest tightened. She wanted to deny it, to insist she was just a student, just a girl trying to survive among humans. But the lie felt hollow, and he would see through it anyway. There was no hiding, not from him, not from an alpha who sensed truth the way wolves sensed scent on the wind. "I can handle myself," she whispered, a tremor in her voice that both betrayed her and demanded to be respected. He studied her for a heartbeat that stretched into eternity, and then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. "Perhaps," he said, stepping back, though his eyes never left hers. "But be warned, Lyra. The world you think you know is changing, and I will find you again, whether you want me to or not." With that, he turned, slipping away like smoke in sunlight, leaving her alone yet profoundly unsettled. Her pulse thundered in her ears, her mind spinning with questions she did not dare voice aloud. He had found her, he knew who she was, and somehow, somewhere deep inside, a part of her thrilled at the thought, not of being caught, but of being seen. The alpha had appeared, and everything she had hidden for so long was teetering on the edge of discovery. Lyra pressed her back against the locker, taking slow, steady breaths, trying to quell the storm in her chest. She knew one thing with terrifying clarity: nothing would ever be the same again. The auditorium buzzed with chatter and laughter, a chaotic hum that set Lyra's nerves on edge. She had hoped that blending into the crowd would make her invisible, that her careful facade would remain intact for at least one night. But fate had other plans. As she stepped toward an empty seat near the back, a sudden crash rang out, trays tumbling in the cafeteria hallway, followed by startled gasps. Her heart lurched. Reflexively, she moved to dodge a flying notebook, only to collide with a classmate, spilling her drink across her uniform. "Oh my God," someone whispered loudly. "Did you see that?" Laughter erupted from a nearby table, sharp and cutting. The noise twisted into something cruel, a public display that set her cheeks ablaze with humiliation. Lyra froze, the heat in her ears matching the rage and panic clawing in her chest, and then she felt it. A presence calm, commanding, threading through the crowd toward her, the alpha. His eyes found hers instantly, piercing through the sea of students as if the world around them had dissolved. He didn't rush forward, didn't intervene immediately, Instead, he watched, calculating, protective, aware of every glance cast her way. Lyra wanted to shrink into herself, to vanish entirely, but every instinct screamed that running now would be a mistake. She could feel the unspoken pull between them, the silent warning in his gaze. Endure, survive, and he would protect her. But not yet. The whispers grew louder, accusations mingling with amusement. Clumsy much. A classmate snickered. Maybe she's trying too hard to fit in. Lyra's chest tightened, her throat felt dry, her hands trembling at her sides. She had hidden from humans, hidden from wolves, hidden from fate itself. But here, in the glaring light of public scrutiny, nothing she had mastered could shield her from the sting of exposure. And then he stepped forward. The alpha moved with the grace of a predator and the presence of a king, parting the crowd without a word. The tension in the room shifted, subtle yet undeniable. Even those unaware of the supernatural could feel it. He reached her side, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating off him, yet his expression remained unreadable. "You're safe," he said quietly, voice carrying only for her. "Let them talk. It doesn't matter, not to me." Lyra's pulse thundered in her ears. His nearness was overwhelming, his words a bomb and a spark at once. She wanted to argue, to insist she could handle herself, but the fire in her chest softened under his gaze. For a fleeting moment, she allowed herself to feel protected, to trust him just a fraction. But trust was dangerous. The whispers continued, the laughter lingered, and she knew that this public humiliation was only the beginning. Someone had noticed her, someone had marked her, and the fragile veil of anonymity she had relied on for years was fraying at the edges. As the alpha's eyes swept over the crowd, locking on each potential threat, Lyra realized with a shiver that the game had changed. She was no longer merely hiding. She was being hunted, observed, and, whether she wanted it or not, claimed by a force far greater than herself. The bell rang, signaling the end of the event, but Lyra didn't move immediately. She lingered, feeling the residual heat of embarrassment and the undeniable pull of the alpha's presence. This was only the beginning of a dangerous dance, one where each misstep could cost her everything. The hallways were empty now, the echo of departing students fading like whispers in a cavern. Lyra's steps were light, careful, yet every fiber of her being remained alert. Her chest still burned from the embarrassment earlier, a fiery reminder that hiding was becoming impossible. And then she felt it, the subtle shift in the air, the presence that had haunted her days since the stranger appeared. He was there, the alpha. "You're avoiding me," he said quietly, stepping from the shadows near the stairwell. His voice was low, smooth, and commanding, yet threaded with something unreadable. Curiosity, amusement, maybe even. Concern. Lyra's pulse quickened. "I'm just trying to get through the day," she replied, voice barely above a whisper, hoping her nerves didn't betray her. He tilted his head, eyes dark and unyielding. "You think hiding keeps you safe, but it doesn't, not from me, not from what you are." Her throat went dry. She wanted to step back, to insist she was just a girl, but his gaze pinned her in place. Every instinct screamed that he could see through her carefully constructed mask, that he knew more than he should. "I don't know what you want from me," she said finally, her voice trembling with frustration and fear. "Curiosity," he admitted, a shadow of a smile brushing his lips, and something more. Lyra's stomach fluttered. Something more. The words were simple, but the weight behind them made her chest ache. She had spent years avoiding exactly this. The pull of someone who could unravel her carefully hidden life with a single glance, a single word. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating off him, close enough that the scent of wolf and authority made her senses reel. His presence was intoxicating, dangerous, and utterly magnetic. "You're not like anyone I've ever encountered," he murmured, "and yet, you fascinate me." Her breath caught. The forbidden pull between them tightened, a slow, burning tension that made her heart race and her thoughts scatter. She wanted to deny it, to retreat into the safety of her shadows, but part of her, a part she hadn't dared acknowledge in years, wanted him to stay away. She whispered, though the words lacked conviction. He chuckled softly, the sound low and thrilling. "I can't, and neither can you. That's the problem, isn't it? Her gaze dropped to the floor, fighting the heat rising to her cheeks. She wanted to run, but the magnetic pull of his eyes held her rooted. Every instinct in her body told her to flee, yet desire and fear twisted together, leaving her exposed in ways she had long forgotten. A moment passed, heavy with unspoken words, and then he stepped back, just enough to release her from the invisible grip, though his presence lingered like a shadow. "Think carefully, Lyra," he said, voice low and deliberate. "Curiosity can be dangerous, but sometimes it's worth the risk." Lyra's chest ached as he walked away, leaving her alone in the empty hallway. The taste of danger and longing lingered on her tongue, and she knew with a thrill and a shiver that the dance between them had begun, and that she was already losing. Night draped itself over the town like a velvet cloak, soft and heavy, pressing against Lyra's chest as she walked home from school. The streets were quieter than usual, lit only by the glow of flickering street lamps and the occasional passing car. Her senses remained alert, every shadow a potential threat, every whisper of wind a warning. She had learned long ago that danger rarely announced itself. It crept, it lingered, it struck when least expected. And tonight her instincts screamed that something, or someone, was watching. The hairs on the back of her neck prickled as a low growl echoed through the empty alleyways, not human, not entirely. The scent hit her before the form emerged, wolf, strong and predatory, carrying the unmistakable aura of another pack. Lyra's breath hitched and her body tensed, muscles coiled for flight or fight. She could feel the familiar stirrings of her dormant abilities, enhanced speed, heightened senses, but she had always restrained them, hidden them beneath layers of careful concealment. Tonight, though, survival demanded she act. A figure stepped from the shadows, eyes glinting in the dim light. He was younger than the Alpha, but his aura radiated challenge and menace. "You shouldn't be here," the stranger growled, teeth flashing in a brief, predatory snarl. "This territory isn't safe for someone like you." Lyra's pulse pounded. "I can handle myself," she said, voice steady, though her stomach twisted with tension. The rival smirked, circling her like a predator testing its prey. Lyra's mind raced. She couldn't call the Alpha. He wouldn't arrive in time. But her instincts had been sharpened through years of hiding, survival, and vigilance. A sudden motion, a blur of speed, sent her leaping behind a dumpster, narrowly evading the rival's swipe. Her reflexes were faster than any human's, yet she knew she had to stay calm. One misstep, and she would reveal more than she could afford, and then she heard it, a deep, commanding growl that shook the alley. The Alpha had arrived. The rival froze, sensing the shift in the air, the undeniable presence of a power greater than his own. Lyra's heart leapt with relief and something more. Anticipation, awe, the unspoken bond she felt every time he was near. The Alpha's eyes locked on hers, a silent question. "Are you unharmed?" She nodded just barely and watched as he stepped forward, muscles coiled, voice a low rumble that carried authority. "Step back," he ordered the rival. The command was not a suggestion. It was law, and even the most reckless dared not defy it. The stranger hesitated, measuring the Alpha, before finally retreating into the shadows with a hiss of frustration. The tension in the alley eased, leaving only the two of them in the moonlight. Lyra's chest heaved, a mixture of fear, adrenaline, and relief coursing through her. The Alpha approached her, slow, deliberate, his presence overwhelming yet comforting. "You're not safe here," he murmured, voice carrying concern that unsettled her more than fear ever had. "But you're stronger than you realize, and I will protect you, if you let me." Lyra's pulse hammered in her ears. She wanted to protest, to insist she could manage alone, but the truth was undeniable. The world she had hidden in for so long was unraveling, and she needed him more than she cared to admit. As he extended his hand, she felt the invisible threads between them tighten, a pull that was both terrifying and irresistible. In the shadows of the pack, she realized her life was no longer entirely her own, and that the dance with the Alpha, the danger, and her own hidden powers had only just begun. The evening air pressed against Lyra's skin like a living thing, heavy with the scent of pine and distant rain. Her thoughts were a tangled web of fear, desire, and frustration. The encounter with the rival pack had left her shaken, yet strangely exhilarated. Her pulse still raced, and her body remembered every brush of adrenaline as if it had awakened something long dormant. She hadn't intended to think about him, not tonight, not after the Alpha had vanished into the shadows, leaving only the faint echo of his presence. And yet, his words, his gaze, his mere nearness lingered in her mind like an unrelenting flame. "I will protect you, if you let me." Her chest tightened at the memory. She wanted to deny it, to focus on survival, on staying invisible. But the truth was undeniable. The Alpha stirred something in her that she had tried for years to suppress. Desire, curiosity, the need to be seen, understood, and perhaps claimed, yet fear kept her grounded. She had hidden for so long, trusting no one, revealing nothing, relying solely on her instincts and abilities. To trust him meant letting down walls she had spent years constructing. It meant vulnerability, and vulnerability had always been dangerous. The night deepened, and she found herself wandering to the edge of the forest, where moonlight filtered through the trees like liquid silver. Every rustle of leaves, every distant howl reminded her that the world was larger, more dangerous than she had allowed herself to see. And then he appeared, silent as the shadows, commanding as the night itself. The Alpha, his presence made the air feel electric, every nerve in her body alert. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said, his voice low but threaded with something softer. Concern, maybe even. Longing, Lyra swallowed hard. "I needed air," she whispered, though even she knew the truth was more complicated. She needed distance, and yet, somehow, she needed him too. He stepped closer, eyes scanning her face, reading the unspoken fears and desires she tried so hard to conceal. "You're stronger than you realize," he murmured, "and yet, you push me away." Why, her breath caught. She wanted to tell him that it wasn't about him. It was about survival, about keeping the secret that could destroy them both. But the words faltered, leaving only the weight of tension between them. I can't afford to trust anyone," she admitted, voice barely audible, "not anymore." He reached out, fingers brushing against hers, a touch that sparked fire through her veins. "Then let me earn it," he said, voice firm yet tender. "I won't force you, but you don't have to face this alone." Her heart betrayed her, fluttering wildly at the warmth of his hand, the intensity of his gaze. Desire and fear collided within her, twisting together in a storm she couldn't name or control. The pull toward him was undeniable, yet every instinct screamed to resist. A distant howl shattered the fragile moment, a reminder that danger was never far. She pulled back slightly, heart pounding, mind spinning. I need to think," she whispered. He nodded, understanding, yet his eyes lingered on her with an intensity that made her stomach twist. "I'll wait," he said simply. "But know this, Lyra, I'm not letting you go." As he disappeared into the shadows, she pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the rapid thrum of her pulse. Conflicted desires warred within her, and she realized with a shiver that the dance between them was no longer just about survival. It was about hearts, power, and a pull neither could deny. The night had settled into a tense quiet, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the distant call of wolves. Lyra moved cautiously through the forest edge, senses heightened, every shadow a potential threat. She had grown accustomed to the feeling, the weight of being hunted, of needing to stay invisible, but tonight the tension carried a different flavor, deliberate, predatory, and uncomfortably close. A low growl rumbled from behind a thicket, making her heart leap. She spun, instincts flaring, only to see a figure step into the pale moonlight. Tall, broad, shouldered and exuding raw power, he was not the Alpha. His eyes glinted with challenge, and his presence radiated danger. "You're far from safe here, little wolf," he sneered, voice smooth but laced with threat. "Thought you could hide from me." Lyra stiffened. Every fiber of her being screamed to flee, yet the stranger's gaze pinned her in place. He knew he had found her, her carefully guarded secret. Her strength, her powers, her very identity was no longer hidden. Before she could react, a flash of movement cut across the clearing, a blur of darkness, muscle, and authority. The Alpha appeared, eyes locked on the rival with an intensity that made the air itself tremble. "Step back," he commanded, low and lethal. The rival smirked, circling, measuring the alpha's strength against his own. "So this is the one," he hissed, "the pup they've been hiding." Lyra's chest tightened. The alpha's protective presence surged around her like a shield, yet the tension in the air was palpable. She could feel the electricity between the two males, a battle of wills that made her pulse race with fear. And something more, something she didn't dare name. "You've gone too far." The alpha growled, his voice carrying authority that made even the trees seem to bend in acknowledgement. "Leave her out of this." The rival laughed, a harsh, grating sound that cut through the forest night. "Or what? You'll stop me. You can't protect her from everything, Alpha." Lyra's hands trembled at her sides, but instinct took over. She could feel the stirring of her dormant powers, the speed, the strength, the senses that had kept her alive for so long. And for the first time, she realized that she didn't have to hide them entirely anymore. A sudden movement, a leap, a flash of claws, signaled the battle beginning. The alpha moved with precision, strength, and authority, while the rival countered with equal ferocity. Lyra ducked instinctively, heart hammering, yet she could sense the rhythm of the fight, the ebb and flow of power and dominance. Her pulse thundered as she realized something shocking. She could help. Not yet fully unleashed, but her presence, her instincts, her hidden strength could turn the tide if she dared, and she would. The rival hissed in frustration, eyes flicking toward her, realizing perhaps for the first time that she was not the fragile human he had assumed. Lyra's chest burned with a mix of fear and exhilaration, the thrill of power coursing through her veins, and the undeniable pull of the alpha near her, protective, commanding, alive. When the final roar echoed through the trees, the rival retreated into the shadows, leaving only the alpha and her standing amid the clearing. His eyes found hers, a mixture of pride, warning, and something more, something that made her knees weak. "You're stronger than you think," he murmured, stepping close, voice low and intimate. "And you're mine. Do you understand?" Lyra swallowed hard, breath trembling, pulse racing. I understand," she whispered, knowing the truth was deeper than words, that the dance between them, desire, danger, and destiny, had only just begun. The forest was quiet, almost eerily so, the kind of stillness that made every rustle of leaves sound like a shout. Lyra's steps were light, careful, each one measured as though the ground itself could betray her. But tonight, it wasn't the shadows that threatened her, it was him, the Alpha. He stood beneath the moonlight, tall and commanding, the very air around him vibrating with power. His dark eyes were fixed on hers, unwavering, intense, as though he could peer directly into her soul. The protective barrier he carried always made her feel both safe and exposed, and tonight, it carried a challenge she could not ignore. "You've been hiding for too long," he said, his voice low, vibrating with authority and something harder to define. "Expectation, perhaps, or impatience. I can sense it. Your hesitation, your fear, even your strength, but hiding will only hurt you further." Lyra's chest tightened. She wanted to argue, to claim she could survive on her own, to insist she didn't need him. Yet the truth pressed against her ribs like a weight she could no longer deny. I'm not ready," she admitted, voice trembling despite her best effort to steady it. His lips curved faintly, a shadow of a smile that sent a jolt through her. "Ready or not, you cannot run from who you are, and you cannot run from me. You're my mate, Lyra. That is not a question, but a fact of the world." Her heart hammered. The words both terrified and exhilarated her. She had hidden from humans, from rival packs, from herself. But she had never hidden from him, never from this truth that now stood before her like a living, breathing force. I don't know if I can," she whispered, voice breaking under the weight of emotion. Fear, desire, and longing collided in a storm that left her breathless. He stepped closer, the air between them charged, each heartbeat echoing in the forest like a drum. "Then you will learn. Tonight you face your fear, or you lose me. Your choice, Lyra." The challenge was clear, not a threat, not a suggestion, but a test, an ultimatum wrapped in care and dominance. Lyra swallowed hard, feeling the pull of her instincts, her hidden strength, and her growing desire. Could she trust him fully, reveal herself completely, embrace the bond that tethered them together? The moonlight fell across her face as she took a deep breath, shoulders straightening. I will try, she said, voice steadying with determination, though her heart raced. The Alpha's eyes softened ever so slightly, a shadow of relief flickering in their depths. Good, he murmured, because the world is about to demand everything from you, and I will be by your side every step. He extended a hand, the gesture both invitation and command, a promise and a challenge entwined. Lyra hesitated for a heartbeat, then took it. The moment their fingers touched, an undeniable spark surged through her, the pull of fate, power, and desire mingling into a single force that left her trembling and alive. Tonight, she would no longer hide. Tonight, she would face the Alpha's challenge, and whatever came next, she would meet it as herself. Moonlight filtered through the trees, casting silver shadows over the clearing where Lyra stood, heart hammering in her chest. The forest seemed alive tonight, pulsing with a rhythm she hadn't felt in years. Her senses stretched to the limit, every rustle of leaves, every whisper of wind amplified. She could feel the presence of the Alpha nearby, steady and grounding, yet she was no longer just the girl hiding in human form. Something deep within her stirred, ancient and untamed. The rival pack's intrusion had left traces, a lingering tension in the air that demanded action. Lyra's breath hitched as an instinct she had long suppressed awakened. Muscles that had been dormant tightened with power. Her body moved with fluid precision, faster, sharper, stronger than she had ever realized. The forest seemed to respond to her presence, the ground beneath her feet humming with energy. The Alpha stepped beside her, his gaze scanning her with awe and intensity. "Do you feel it?" he asked, voice low, almost reverent. Lyra nodded, though words failed her. A warmth, a surge, something ancient and wild coursing through her veins, leaving her trembling. She raised a hand, and the leaves around them stirred, swirling as if drawn by an invisible force. Her eyes widened as realization struck. Her powers, hidden for so long, were awakening, and she could no longer hide what she truly was. "You're incredible," the Alpha murmured, a shadow of awe softening his commanding presence. "Stronger than I imagined, and you're mine, always." Lyra's chest tightened. Fear mingled with exhilaration, a cocktail that left her breathless. All the years of hiding, the careful masks, the lonely nights of survival, none of it mattered anymore. She had been gifted, or cursed, with a power that could not remain concealed, and now, standing beside the Alpha, she understood that she was finally ready to embrace it. A sudden rustle in the shadows made her spin, instincts flaring. The rival pack had returned, drawn by the surge of energy she had released. Lyra's hands trembled, then clenched as she realized something profound. She was no longer powerless. With the Alpha by her side, she could face them, could defend herself, could stand without fear. The first movement was almost instinctual. Her legs propelled her forward with unnatural speed, dodging the rival's swipe with ease. Energy coiled around her, sharp and vibrant, and her senses, sight, smell, hearing, expanded beyond human limits. Every motion, every decision was precise. She was not just surviving, she was fighting back, alive with power she had long denied. The Alpha moved beside her, protective and commanding, his presence an anchor as she tested the edges of her newfound strength. Together, they were unstoppable, a perfect union of raw power and control. The rivals faltered, uncertain, sensing the formidable force they faced. When the dust settled and the forest returned to stillness, Lyra's chest heaved, adrenaline mingling with the awe of what she had just discovered. She looked to the Alpha, and his eyes shone with pride and something deeper, admiration, protection, and an unspoken bond that went beyond words. "You're no longer hiding," he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And neither will I let you. Your powers, your heart, everything that makes you who you are. It's ours, together." Lyra's pulse thundered, a mixture of fear, exhilaration, and desire. For the first time in years, she felt whole, alive, and unstoppable. The hidden powers within her had awakened, and with the Alpha beside her, she knew she could finally embrace everything she had been running from. Her fate, her bond, and the love that had been waiting all along. The night air was thick with tension, carrying the scent of pine, rain, and something darker. Betrayal. Lyra's hands trembled as she paced the edge of the forest clearing, chest heaving, heart caught between fear and desire. The rival pack had returned, leaving chaos in their wake, and though her powers had awakened, the emotional weight of recent events pressed down like a storm. Her thoughts were a whirlwind, spinning back to the Alpha. She had trusted him, relied on him, allowed herself to feel something dangerous, something she had buried for years, and yet, in the flicker of a moment, that trust felt fragile, as if one wrong move could shatter it entirely. A sudden rustle made her spin. There he was, the Alpha. Emerging from the shadows, his presence magnetic, commanding, and impossibly close. His dark eyes, usually steady and protective, flickered with something she couldn't quite read. Frustration, longing, and pain. "Lyra," he said, voice low, almost a growl. "Why didn't you tell me? She stammered, heat rising to her cheeks, throat tight with unspoken words. "I didn't want to risk losing you. I didn't want you to see me hurt." He interrupted, stepping closer, closing the distance in a heartbeat. "To doubt me. You think I can't handle your secrets. You think hiding everything from me will keep you safe." Her pulse raced. He was right. And yet the betrayal she felt, not from him but from herself, twisted her stomach. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice breaking, though the fire of frustration and longing flared in her eyes. I had to protect myself always." He ran a hand through his dark hair, jaw tight, before reaching out, his fingers brushing her cheek in a touch that ignited every nerve. "Lyra, I'm yours, all of you, secrets, powers, fears. Even the parts you're afraid to face. You don't have to protect yourself from me, but you can't push me away either." The words struck her like a bolt of lightning. Desire surged in her veins, fierce and consuming, intertwining with the sting of guilt and the ache of vulnerability. She wanted to argue, to retreat, but the pull of his presence was irresistible, magnetic, and utterly consuming. Before she could resist, he closed the distance, lips capturing hers in a fierce, demanding kiss. It was more than passion. It was affirmation, challenge, and promise all at once. Her hands pressed against his chest, heart hammering, body trembling as every emotion collided in a storm of fire and longing. They broke apart briefly, breaths ragged, foreheads resting together. His eyes searched hers, dark and intense. "Do you understand, Lyra?" he murmured. "No more hiding. No more walls. I'm here, but you have to let me in." Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes as she nodded, desire and trust battling within her. I understand," she whispered, her voice trembling. The Alpha's lips brushed hers again, softer this time, a promise woven into every movement. "Good, because whatever comes next, we face it together." And as they stood in the moonlit clearing, the world around them fading, Lyra realized something profound. Trust had been broken, but desire, passion, and their bond were stronger than fear. She had given herself to him, body, heart, and soul, and the fire between them would burn through every obstacle to come. The moon hung high, full and luminous, casting silver light over the forest clearing. Shadows stretched long and dark, weaving through the trees like living creatures. Lyra's senses were sharp, every rustle, every whisper amplified. The rival pack had returned, stronger and more determined than before, and the air vibrated with imminent conflict. Beside her, the Alpha moved with lethal grace, eyes scanning the darkness, every muscle coiled for action. The energy between them thrummed, a bond forged in trust, desire, and the awakening of her powers. They were no longer separate. They were a unit, predator and mate, unstoppable together. A low growl rolled through the clearing. Figures emerged from the shadows, rival pack members, their eyes glinting with malice, teeth bared. The leader stepped forward, a tall, formidable wolf with a cruel smirk. "Thought you could hide from us," he sneered. "Thought you could take our territory." Lyra's pulse raced, but fear was tempered by power. She could feel the Alpha's presence beside her, strong, protective, commanding. "You're trespassing," he growled, voice low and dangerous. "Leave or face consequences you cannot survive." The rival laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "We'll see about that." In an instant, the forest erupted into chaos. Claws flashed, bodies lunged, and the night was filled with the snarls and roars of battle. Lyra moved instinctively, powers surging through her veins. She was faster, stronger, more precise than any human or untrained wolf could hope to be. Her senses guided her, alerting her to every strike, every movement. She ducked a swipe, countered with a kick, and felt the thrill of her strength as the rival pack faltered under the combined force of her and the Alpha. The Alpha was a storm beside her, every movement perfect, controlled, yet wild with power. Together, they were unstoppable, a perfect synchronization of predator and mate, strength and instinct. The rival leader lunged, aiming for Lyra, but she anticipated the move, sidestepping with supernatural agility. The Alpha intercepted, jaws clamping around the rival's arm, forcing him to stumble backward. Breath heaving, heart racing, Lyra realized the truth of what she had become. She was no longer the hidden girl, powerless and alone. She was a force of nature, awakened, bonded, and unafraid. And beside her stood the Alpha, claiming her not just in body, but in strength, courage, and destiny. The final rival hesitated, glancing between them, and in that moment of hesitation, the Alpha's commanding growl shattered the tension. Leave now. The rivals retreated into the shadows, defeated, their threat neutralized. The forest fell silent, save for the ragged breaths of Lyra and the Alpha. She looked up at him, chest heaving, hair plastered to her face with sweat and adrenaline. "You fought well," he murmured, brushing a hand along her cheek. "Stronger than I could have imagined." Lyra's heart swelled with pride and relief. "We did it. Together," she whispered, voice trembling with awe and exhilaration. He stepped closer, capturing her in a fierce embrace, lips brushing hers in a kiss that was more promise than passion, more claim than desire. "Always together," he murmured, "no matter what comes." And under the silver glow of the moon, with the forest holding its breath around them, Lyra realized the battle was over, not just the fight against their enemies, but the inner struggle she had carried for so long. She was seen, protected, and claimed. Her heart, her powers, her life, everything was finally hers, and hers with him. The first rays of dawn pierced the forest canopy, scattering gold across the dewy leaves. The battle was over, but the echoes of the night's violence linger, rattling her chest, tingling in her senses, reminding her that she had survived, grown, and emerged stronger than ever. Lyra stood beside the Alpha at the edge of the clearing, the early light reflecting in his dark eyes, softening the commanding intensity that had always made her shiver. The forest seemed to hold its breath as he turned to her, every movement deliberate, every glance heavy with meaning. "Lyra," he murmured, voice low and steady, carrying the weight of the bond that now bound them, all of it, the danger, the fear, the power you've awakened. It led you here to me, to us, and nothing can change that. Her heart thumped, a mixture of awe, relief, and longing. She had hidden, run, and survived for so long, yet everything had led her to this moment. Her powers, her fears, her desire, her life intertwined with his in a way that was undeniable. He extended a hand, and as she took it, a pulse of warmth and energy flowed between them, sealing what words could not fully capture. It was more than touch. It was blood, bond, and destiny intertwined. She felt it resonate in her chest, in her mind, and in the core of her being. "You are mine, Lyra," he whispered, lips brushing hers in a gentle, possessive kiss that promised protection, passion, and partnership for a lifetime. "And I am yours, forever." Tears pricked her eyes, but they were not tears of fear. They were tears of relief, acceptance, and profound joy. All the walls she had built, all the secrets she had carried, melted away in the warmth of his presence. She had faced enemies, confronted her powers, and endured the darkest nights. And now she could finally belong. Lyra leaned into him, heart beating in perfect rhythm with his, voice soft but firm. "Forever," she echoed. The forest around them seemed to exhale, the tension of countless battles dissolving into the quiet hum of life returning. Birds began to chirp, the wind rustled the trees gently, and the sun climbed higher, casting its golden blessing over the pair. The Alpha's hand tightened around hers, a silent vow, and she felt it resonate deep within her soul. Bond, trust, and love fused into one unbreakable force. No shadows threatened them now, no rivals lingered, and no secrets remained hidden. Lyra's journey, from hiding in human schools, from fearing discovery, from doubting herself, had led her to this singular truth. She was seen, she was powerful, and she was claimed. As they walked hand in hand toward the awakening world, the Alpha beside her, Lyra realized that life would no longer be lived in hiding. She had found her mate, embraced her power, and stepped fully into her destiny. Together, they were unstoppable, unbreakable, and infinitely alive. Sunlight spilled across the forest, warm and golden, scattering diamonds of dew on leaves and grass. Lyra stood at the edge of the clearing, the cool morning breeze teasing strands of hair across her face. Beside her, the Alpha, her mate, her anchor rested, a protective hand on her shoulder. The world was quiet, peaceful, and for the first time in years, she could breathe freely. The forest had transformed overnight. Shadows that had once threatened now seemed gentle, the lingering scent of danger replaced by life, growth, and the soft hum of nature awakening. Lyra's powers, once hidden and feared, now pulsed within her in perfect harmony with the Alpha's presence. She felt whole, unbroken, and fully alive. "You're different in the sunlight," he murmured, voice low and tender. His gaze, dark and intense, softened as it lingered on her, full of pride and unspoken affection. Stronger, brighter, alive, Lyra smiled, leaning into his warmth. "And I feel it. I feel everything, the forest, the power, us, together." Her voice trembled slightly, but it was the tremor of joy, not fear. He took her hand, holding it gently yet firmly, a silent promise that nothing could break the bond forged in blood, fire, and love. "Nothing will ever take this from us. I'll protect you, always." Her chest swelled with love, gratitude, and relief. She had hidden for years in human schools, hiding from her past, her power, even herself. But the Alpha had found her, not just her body, but her heart, her strength, her essence. And in him, she had discovered what it truly meant to belong. Around them, the forest whispered secrets of renewal. Birds sang from the treetops, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and the sunlight painted the world in hues of hope and promise. The rival packs were gone, the threats dissolved, and the danger that had haunted her every step now felt distant, almost unreal. Lyra glanced at the Alpha, a soft laugh escaping her lips, mingling with the rustle of the wind. "I never imagined life could feel like this," she admitted, voice soft but unwavering, peaceful, safe, and full of you. He pulled her close, lips brushing her temple in a kiss that was more promise than passion, more bond than desire. "You've earned this, Lyra, all of it, and now we step into it together, human world, wolf world, our world." Hand in hand, they began walking through the sunlit forest, their steps synchronized, hearts beating as one. The world was vast, unpredictable, and full of challenges, but they faced it together, unstoppable, unafraid, and irrevocably bound. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to smile freely, to let go of fear and secrecy. She was no longer hiding. She was alive, powerful, and claimed by the Alpha who had always seen her true self. Together, they would face every sunrise, every shadow, and every heartbeat. Side by side, mate and mate, forever. The forest embraced them in silence and light, a new dawn stretching across the horizon. And in that golden glow, Lyra understood the deepest truth of her journey. Love, trust, and destiny could never be denied.